The morning fog clung to the cemetery like a heavy breath that refused to leave, and in that pale silence a man knelt at a grave, shoulders shaking, tears soaking into cold soil. His hands trembled as if the earth itself were the only thing keeping him upright, and in that moment he looked smaller than the world had ever allowed him to be. He was a poor single father with calloused palms and tired eyes, crying where hope often went to rest. Just as he bowed his head, a presence loomed behind him, composed and distant, wealth and grief wrapped in the same elegant coat. This was the moment everything changed, the moment two broken lives collided in a place meant for endings. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when strangers truly see one another, please take a moment now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find their way into the world. The man's name was Aaron, though few people had spoken it with warmth in years. Life had narrowed around him after his wife passed away during childbirth, leaving him alone with a newborn daughter and a grief that never learned to sleep. Bills piled up like silent accusations, jobs slipped through his fingers because exhaustion followed him everywhere, and pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. He worked nights unloading trucks, days fixing what others threw away, and every spare minute he spent being a father, a role he learned through mistakes and quiet promises whispered to a child who could not yet understand them. The cemetery had become his refuge, not because he enjoyed pain, but because it was the one place he felt close to answers. On this particular morning, he had come to visit a grave he believed held the remains of a man he never met, a man whose choices had unknowingly shaped his own desperate present. Years earlier, when Aaron's wife was alive and hope still felt reachable, a stranger had helped them during a moment of crisis. It was late, their car had broken down, and the city felt unforgiving. That stranger had given them money without asking questions, had ensured they reached home safely, and had vanished before gratitude could find words. Later, through a chain of coincidences and a name scribbled on a receipt, Aaron learned that the stranger was a businessman who had died suddenly. The guilt of never repaying that kindness settled deep inside Aaron, turning into a quiet vow to honor a debt he could never truly return. He brought flowers to the grave whenever he could, not out of obligation, but because it reminded him that even in his darkest hours, someone once believed he was worth helping. That morning, as Aaron knelt there with his head lowered, he felt the presence of someone else before he saw her. The woman stood tall, her posture polished by years of control, but her eyes betrayed a sorrow money could not soften. She was known in the city as Clara Hale, a self-made millionaire whose success stories filled business magazines. To the world, she was untouchable. To the cemetery, she was simply a widow. She had come early to avoid attention, to stand alone with the men she had loved and lost, only to find a stranger already mourning at her husband's grave. Confusion gave way to suspicion, and suspicion sharpened into something like anger, because grief often demands explanations even when none exist. Aaron sensed her gaze and slowly rose, wiping his face with the sleeve of his worn jacket. He looked embarrassed, like a man caught trespassing not on land, but on someone else's pain. He tried to step away, ready to disappear as he had learned to do whenever his presence caused discomfort. But something about the stillness between them held him there. The fog lifted just enough to reveal the name etched in stone, and Clara realized this man was not a vandal or a thief. He was broken in a way she recognized too well. The silence stretched, heavy and awkward, until understanding began to replace judgment. Clara studied Aaron, noticing the frayed edges of his life, the exhaustion carved into his posture. She saw sincerity where she had expected deceit. Memories of her husband's generosity surfaced, moments when he had spoken of helping strangers, of believing that wealth meant responsibility. For the first time since his death, she felt that part of him still moved through the world, alive in unexpected ways. Aaron, in his own quiet way, felt exposed. He wanted to explain everything, to justify his tears, but words felt clumsy and insufficient. Instead, he reached into his pocket and held the flowers he had brought, their stems slightly crushed from his grip. He placed them gently at the grave, a final gesture of respect, and turned as if to leave. That was when Clara spoke, not with accusation, but with a question that carried the weight of loss. She wanted to know who he was and why he cared so deeply for someone he had never truly known. Without direct conversation, the truth unfolded through presence and patience. Aaron shared his story not with speeches, but with the way his shoulders sagged when he mentioned his daughter, with the way his eyes softened at the thought of a kindness that had saved his family once. Clara listened with her heart, recognizing the invisible threads connecting them. She realized that her husband's legacy was not confined to boardrooms and balance sheets, but lived on in this man's survival, in a child who had been given a chance at life. Time passed differently after that morning. Clara found herself thinking about Aaron often, about the courage it took to keep going when the world seemed indifferent. She arranged for discreet help, not as charity, but as investment in a life already rich with integrity. Aaron received opportunities that matched his skills, chances he had long been denied. He worked hard, refusing shortcuts, determined to prove worthy of trust placed in him. Each step forward felt like a quiet victory, not just for him, but for the memory of the men whose grave had brought them together. As months turned into years, Aaron's life transformed in ways he had once believed impossible. Stable work allowed him to provide for his daughter, whose laughter became the sound that filled his small apartment with warmth. He never forgot where he came from, never lost the humility carved by hardship. Clara watched from a respectful distance, her own grief easing as she saw goodness continue through another family. In helping Aaron, she found healing for herself, a reminder that love did not end with death, but changed shape. The cemetery visits became less frequent, not because the bond was forgotten, but because life demanded presence elsewhere. When Aaron did return, it was with gratitude rather than desperation. He stood taller, his tears replaced by quiet smiles, his prayers filled with thanks instead of pleas. He taught his daughter about kindness, about the unseen hands that lift us when we fall, and about honoring those who help without expecting anything in return. Near the end of this story, as the fog finally clears, there is a moment worth holding on to. It is the understanding that even in places marked by loss, beginnings are possible. That a single act of compassion can echo across years, connecting strangers in ways they may never fully comprehend. Aaron and Clara never needed grand declarations or dramatic resolutions. Their lives intersected, changed, and moved forward, each carrying a piece of the other's healing. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness matters and that second chances are real, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so these stories continue to reach those who are searching for hope. Before the ending, we have one special request for you. Please comment below what this story made you feel, or share a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life. Your words may inspire someone who needs it today. The grave remains where it always was, silent and still, but its meaning has changed. It is no longer just a marker of loss, but a reminder that love, once given, never truly disappears. It lives on in tears shed for the right reasons, in hands extended without expectation, and in lives rebuilt from the ashes of despair. And somewhere beyond the fog, a single father walks forward with his child, carrying a legacy that began with kindness and ended with hope.